All right, good morning. So let's see. While you're poring over these objectives, in your app you have the slides that I have for this session. I warn you, every slide that you're going to see is in there, but it's not in the same order as it is in there because I have an untreated OCD and I mess with my slides right up until the time that it's time to present. However, even though they're not in the same order, they're all there. So, what I want to do is talk about classrooms today. To start with, we would always want to think about instruction when we start thinking about classroom management. And so that's where I'm going to start, and that's what's a little bit different from the slides that you have in the app. I'm going to start with the delivery of effective instruction, and then I'm going to say, but how can you do effective instruction if not all the kids are paying attention in the first place, if they're not seated, if they're not, et cetera, et cetera. And so then I'm going to talk about other things we need to do to make instruction work. So my position is going to be, you can't do effective classroom management without effective instruction. And you can't do effective instruction without effective classroom management. Those two things have to happen simultaneously and be built together. So let's start here. And I'm going to kind of hit these things hard and fast because there's a lot of stuff to get through. But we know that if you want to maximize the probability of instruction working for kids, and there's no sure thing, but it's a probability. If you want to maximize the probability of instruction working for kids, you've got to have three things. It's got to be explicit. You're telling them and showing them exactly what it is you want them to do. It's got to be engaging. They have to be thinking and doing, not just passively sitting there. And they have to have opportunities to practice with us giving feedback. And that feedback that we give has to be far more positive than negative. If that's not possible, it means we've got to go back and redo number 1 and number 2. It's got to be more intense. It's got to last longer. It's got to have different examples. It's got to be differentiated in some way. But the only way we know instruction works is the students are successful. The sign on the left and the sign on the right I found on the internet. I don't know where they're from. And I think we could all agree they're ridiculous. The one on the left, for some reason, crime is not allowed only between those hours. The one on the right, drowning is not allowed, in case that was something you had on your mind. Now again, we would agree those are ridiculous because neither one teaches you what to do. Those are not explicit. And someone might say, saying no crime sounds pretty explicit. It's not, because it doesn't tell you what you should do. Telling somebody not to do something does not increase the probability of them doing the right thing. Teaching does. So we're going to start with being explicit. The sign in the middle there I found on the internet. In a classroom. And I took a picture of it because I thought it is as ridiculous as the other two signs. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but I think it's pretty unrealistic that there'd be a kid in your school that would say, "What do you mean no hitting? Since when?" They know. So why, if kids know they're not supposed to hit, do they hit? One, it works really well. If someone's bothering you and you punch them in the mouth, it's a good deterrent. Second, and I think more importantly, they don't know what to do instead. And we end up teaching, in PBIS, at the school level, we teach a lot of things like respect others. And we might even drill down a little bit and say, treat others the way you want them to treat you. And that's good, but I don't think that's very explicit still. What does that look like? What are the circumstances that your kids are going to run into in their lives where they've got to use a skill? And simply saying treat others the way you want them to treat you is not explicit. In my career, every time I've come across a kid who hit somebody and I said, why? They said this: he started it. One of the examples we should be teaching, if we're explicit, is how do you treat other people with respect when they're not treating you with respect? Because that's when they're going to need it. So to be explicit, one of the things is to make it really clear, tell them what we want. But another part of being explicit is making sure we give them examples that are going to fit their real lives. So you're going to have to know your kids, and you're going to have to hunt for examples that match what they're going to see. Second, when we're talking about instruction, I think sometimes people misunderstand and think we're going to do this. We're going to be explicit, and you're going to shut up. Then we'll engage. Then you can practice. In reality, these things all happen at once. While I'm being explicit and telling you about this, I should be asking, have you ever seen that? What would be another example? Do you think this way would work? I should be getting the kids engaged while I'm being explicit. I want their brains to be massaging the information we're teaching. And that's hard because you've got a lot of competition for their brains. Nothing you teach can compete with boy-girl gossip. Nothing. When I'm sitting in your classroom as a middle schooler, my brain will default to boy-girl gossip. And so if you're not grabbing my brain and saying, what do you think about this? Tell me how you do that. Tell the person next to you. Raise your hand if you agree. If you're not doing something to make them be engaged with what you're teaching, they'll look at you and nod their head, but they're not thinking about it. Engagement has to happen throughout. And third, we got to set them up to get it right so that we can say, you got that right. Another random sign I found on the internet, if somebody were to say to me, what's your best example of positive reinforcement in a classroom? I would point to that sign. I saw you do that right, good for you. That's it. Verbal affirmation. That does not preclude you from using anything else, but that's the one that gives us the biggest bang for our buck. Using our language. We're adults, we have language. We're teaching kids that have at least enough language to know, yes, good, thank you. We must use our words when we talk to kids. In the last year, I've had a new puppy at home, which has taught me that I really don't teach behavior very well. One of the things that's reminded me of is how great it is to have language. I would love just to sit down with a dog and say, look, this is all I'm asking, here's why. And I would love to, when the dog does it right, go, now that was the right way. And I can do that if I catch them right at the moment. The beauty of having language is you can say to a kid, hey, a minute ago when you did that, that was really great, here's why. But if you don't say it, the opportunity's lost. So we want to have lots of verbal affirmation for kids in classrooms. So, that's effective instruction. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that could get in the way of effective instruction is behavior. So, excuse me, we're going to talk about some other things. But before we leave this, I want to make clear something. This is some research we did. So we've looked at almost 20,000 classrooms. We sit in the classroom and code what teachers and kids do. And here's something we know. Take 3 teacher behaviors. One is the percentage of time that they're looking at and talking to kids. The second is a rate per minute of them giving kids opportunities to respond, engagement. And the third is the rate per minute that they give kids verbal affirmation. We also count, thumbs up, that kind of thing. If you take those three things and can create a composite score, so a score that incorporates all three things. And we do a latent class analysis which says how many unique types of teacher are there in the world when you consider that composite. And you get three, which is essentially highest, mediumest, and lowest. Now you can predict. If I go into a classroom and watch a teacher teach for 10 minutes, if the teacher I'm watching in that 10 minutes uses those three things in the lowest group of all teachers, right now you can predict if I stay here for the rest of the period, these kids are 27% more likely than the average classroom to be off task, and 67% more likely to have a disruptive behavior. Instruction is really important. But again, there are behaviors that happen sometimes before instruction. And so I'd like to talk about this set of things here. And we'll start with relationships. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the evidence for relationships. Just be aware, we have a lot of evidence for relationships. The part that's harder for me is, what is a relationship? I do research for a living. I measure things, and it's really hard to measure relationship. I think I know it when I see it. I think if I go into a classroom and watch a teacher, I could say, yeah, that teacher has relations with kids, or yikes, I'm not seeing it there. But we know there's something to it. And so I like to think about a guy named Robert Pianta, who's the dean at the University of Virginia, and probably the best known teacher-student relationship researcher around. And he says every single time an adult and a kid have an interaction that ends positively, it's a predictor for multiple other positive things academically, socially, behaviorally. So I asked him once, what do you mean by positive? And he said, not negative. Which means anything that's not negative will count as positive. Hey, did you see that show last night? Yeah, that was good. That counts. How many times can an adult have an interaction with a kid that's benign or better? Now, when I talk about this, sometimes people say, well, those kids don't want to be engaged like that. Like, yeah, they don't want to do math either. But if we know something is a predictor for success and we control it, we now have a responsibility to do that. They'll also say, but they're really unpleasant. And I'll say, I know. Good luck with that. It's our job to find a way. And it doesn't mean, as people I think sometimes think when I talk about this, any of these things, which I won't even say out loud. Because sometimes I think people are saying, these kids are really unpleasant. I have to do one of those things? No. You have to say something to them. Greet them. Make a simple comment. Smile. These are the kinds of things we're looking for. And we've got quite a bit of data that we've collected in schools. We do it in common areas that says at every grade level, adults are at least 3 times more likely to say or gesture something negative than positive to a kid if you're not in a classroom. So think about the school at large and think what kind of a mood your kids are in when they get back to the classroom. So this is really pretty simple. One of the things we have to do to make instruction and management work is to be able to treat kids like humans. So here's the way I'd like you to think about this, prediction-wise. I'm going to put a map of your classroom up on the wall. By the way, we're in Las Vegas right now. I'm going to put a map of your classroom up on the wall. I'm going to put a clock that you can move the hands on, and I'm going to put a blank where you write name of problem behavior. In Las Vegas, you put down your money, you go over there, and you circle on the map the place. You set your clock to the time, and you write down the behavior. And if all of those things happen the way you said, you've won millions of dollars. What would you do for your classroom? What's the place and time and behavior that's most predictive of misbehavior, of failure? And that's really important because we know every single time a kid fails with something we've asked them to do, increases the probability of another failure. But every success increases the probability of a success. And if you can create 4 times more success than failure, we've got great predictability for future success. So what do we have to do to get success? I don't know. Where would you do it in your classroom? At what time of day? And what would be the focus? What do you want them to do? Teach them to do that thing. So if you think about it like this, I'm going to bet with you. You are forced, you don't realize this, you didn't read the fine print when you signed up for this conference, but you have given me access to 10,000 of your dollars. And I'm going to bet it with you right now. I've got this kid sitting at the back of the room. He's not getting anything done. Completely off task. Now, I've got to work from the computer and I've got to talk to all the other kids. I can't go stand back there next to him. So I've decided that if I really want to give him the attention he needs, I've got to move him. He's probably not going to like it. So here's the bet. If he agrees to come with me without a major argument, you've won $10,000. If he doesn't agree or has a big argument with me about it, you've lost $10,000. Stakes are pretty high for you. I'm going to give you 2 choices, and you can pick which one you want me to do. Here's option 1. Hey, you're getting nothing accomplished. Grab your stuff and come with me. There's option 1. If he agrees, you win 10 grand. If he doesn't or argues, you've lost 10 grand. Here's option 2. Hey, I've got something I want to show you. It's really cool. It works great. Bring your book. Come here. Neither one of those is a sure thing, but if you had your money riding on it, which one would you want to see the teacher do? I'm in schools all the time. Why do I always see 1? We have to think about this. Probability. What do you want? What do you want that kid to do? What's the probability that'll happen? And part of that probability rests on what we do. Have we taught before how to do that? Have we been telling them when they're doing it the right way? When I present it to them, am I presenting it like one human to another instead of like a prison guard to an inmate? Those are things that I don't think we always think about as much as we should when we think about the basics of instruction and management. So, let's just play a little. This is based on multiple real classrooms that I've worked with and worked in. Yellow stars equal problem behaviors. Because you're educators and have been in classrooms, I bet you know exactly what's going on. So I've been asking people this for a while now, and I'll say something like, do you think these problems happen at the door on an evenly spaced throughout the day, or are there certain times in the day when there are problems at the door? And people generally say, when they're coming and going, which is not all day, it's at certain times. Right. So we don't need to teach them how to use a door all day long. We need to teach them how to use the door when we're coming and going. When should we give reminders? Randomly throughout the day? No. Right before they're coming and going. That one's pretty easy. And when I ask people, what are they doing there? This is a new one that I've heard like every time I ask now. People are saying, they run and jump up and hit the top of the door. I didn't know that was a big problem in schools, but apparently so. But of course, there's pushing, shoving, being so far out the door that they're actually in the hall and I can't see them. And I'm sure you have many more. But if we said, that's a predictable problem at this predictable time with these kids, then I would ask again, what do you want them to do? Teach that. Practice with them. Engage them. Lots of feedback on it. It's a skill. Skills won't happen without instruction. Pencil sharpener. What time of the day would you most likely see problems at the pencil sharpener? When I ask teachers this, they usually say independent work time. Why independent work time? Because I don't feel like working independently and oops, my pencil is broken. And so it is kind of predictable. The one thing I'd say about the pencil sharpener is there's this legitimacy. Get away from that sharpener. Hey, I gotta sharpen my pencil, but not for 20 minutes. How do you teach how to use a pencil sharpener? How long should, this seems really ridiculous. Seriously, are we gonna teach? Because if you don't, you're going to play this game. Why? I thought 20 minutes was a legitimate amount of time to be sharpening a pencil. What else could go wrong at the pencil sharpener? It's a lot of times it's just a place for kids to pretend to stand in line so they can chat instead of doing whatever else we want them to. I remember as a kid that you had to clean out the old mechanical kind, which made a big mess, or you could blow it in someone's face, which was fun. But those are all things we need to teach. When you want to sharpen your pencil, what do you got to do first? When you are up there, what should you be doing? If you're waiting in line, what should that look like? Maybe it's one at a time when we get up there. How many turns of the thing, or if we've got an electric sharpener, how many seconds should you count before you look at your pencil? I actually have a video, I'm not showing today, of a girl putting her pencil in a pencil sharpener and not pulling it out to look at it for almost a minute. 60 seconds. So these are things that need to be taught. And we don't think about that. We think, well, everybody knows how to use a pencil sharpener. Do they? Maybe they know, but they've got their own ways of doing it that aren't appropriate for what we're doing. Sink. I think of sink as being fairly straightforward. I was just in North Dakota a couple days ago, and I asked, what kind of problems happen at the sink? And the first person that answered me said, they fill it up and stick other kids' heads in it and hold them under. I was like, wow, I was thinking make a mess. That escalated way faster. If that's what's happening in your room, you've got a lot to teach. And it's probably more than just how to use a sink, but how to use a sink is part of this. I see kids clog it, kids make a mess, kids splash each other, you know the things. And when do they do that? Well, is it hand washing time? Is it random because they can go there anytime they want? These are all questions we have to ask. What do I teach them? And what you teach them is going to be dependent upon when do they go there? Why do they go there? What are they supposed to be doing? What would make this work in my classroom? That has to be taught. The coat rack is actually behind a movable little wall, like a little, what do you call that, partition kind of a thing. This is from a real classroom. And I asked the teacher what was happening, and she said, theft and vandalism, and there's even been a fight. And I said, you know, if you can't see kids, the probability of misbehavior goes up dramatically. So how could we fix that? I recommended they move that barricade. She didn't like that idea, and I know this is a one-off oddball thing, but she said, I don't want to have to look at their coats all day, which, I don't know, I think that's weird. But what I had to say back to her is, but if you can predict kids having problems in this place under these circumstances, then you've got to do something to prevent it. That's what we do. Predict, prevent. So maybe you can put a gate on there that they can't access. Maybe you could stand back there all day and somehow avert your eyes from the coats. But you've got to do something. If we can predict a problem, again, I take it back to responsibility. If I can predict it, I have a responsibility to do something to prevent it. Now we got the kid over there in the top left. That's a kid. We're going to have to talk about that kid separately because what that kid does is not related to typical things in the room. It's related to that kid. Here's one of the things we control, the schedule. We control what kids are supposed to do while they're with us. It doesn't matter if you've got kids all day long or if you've got kids for one period that lasts an hour or less. You still control the schedule while they're in your room. So the first job I ever had as a teacher, I was in Oregon, and when I was certified, alternative certified in special ed, I got a job working with adjudicated adolescent boys because that's what I'd been doing without a teaching certificate. And so I got my room of 14 to 18-year-old boys, and the principal basically said, if nobody dies in your room, you can teach here another year. There's no curriculum, there's no schedule, there's no anything. I had the same kids all day. So I felt like I should do something. So I would say something like, get out your math books. And what they heard was, this guy thinks he can make us do math. And so the argument would start. First it would just be no. Then it would be no, and here are 12 ridiculous reasons why we can't. And then it would turn into a negotiation. We're willing to do 1 page of math if we can go outside for 2 hours. And I would say, this is not negotiable. This is on me. Well, what I learned was, if they think I'm trying to manipulate them, they would just argue with me. So here's what I did, and I didn't do this on purpose. I wish I was that smart. I thought, you know what, I think I'll make up a schedule. This is not it, but it looked like this. And I wrote it up on the board. And when I presented it to the kids, it wasn't from me, it's from the man. I had nothing to do with this. Hey, it turns out now they're going to make us use a schedule. And I would act like it was disgusting. We got to do exactly like this. And so from now on, we're supposed to start math at 9:30 and go to 10:20 every day. And here's what really caught them. And again, I was kind of just doing this randomly. I pretended like I was mad about it. And I said, I'll tell you one thing. We will never do math past 10:20. They can't make us. And now we were on the same side. Okay, it's 9:30. Get out your math books. That's what we're supposed to do. But there's no way we're going past 10:20. Now we're on the same side. They got out their math books and they're like, damn, schedule. But they got out their math books. The other thing I learned is put exactly how much we're going to do. We're supposed to do 2 pages today. I think they'd like us to do 3, but no way. We're only doing 2. But I had learned along the way that if you say to this group of kids, hey, let's do another one, that never works well. But if I said we're doing 2, and in the middle I would say, we're already half done. 1 more. It's the way you frame it to kids. But what happened over time is that they really liked the schedule. And this is something we know, and something I guess I learned the hard way in my years working with challenging kids, is kids like structure. And I think we do too. Not at school, but wherever we go. So I think about this as the same for me going to a meeting. If I go to a meeting, which is the worst thing that could happen to me in my life, there'd better be an agenda. Because if there's not an agenda, it's just people talking. And it lasts forever. I find it very comforting as we're in a meeting to check things off. Ha! Done with that. Done with that. And my thought is, when I check that last one off, I'm leaving. Because this is all we had to do. This is what we're giving to kids. Control. I know when it's going to start. I know when it's going to stop. I know how much we're going to do. I have some control. And the more consistent you are with how you set that up and run it, the smoother it will go. Now, do you have to do that for every classroom out there? Clearly not. But if there's even one kid that needs that kind of structure and consistency, it's really hard to do it for one kid and not the rest of the classroom. So my advice is always structure and consistency from day one. You can always back off later, but it's really hard to be completely loosey-goosey and then try to put structure in. So think about consistency from the beginning. Everything on this list must be taught. When I say hand wash, it doesn't mean stand up and run to the sink as fast as you can. We've taught this. When I say hand wash, in my room it would have been, when I say, okay, time for hand wash, you know, put your stuff away, put your hands up on your desk, and I'll be pointing to people to go wash their hands. Now, I only had 8 kids in this lockdown facility in my classroom, so that was easy to do. Most people have way more than that, but you've got to think out, what's my routine? How do I make this work? And my bottom line is always this: what do I have to do to maximize the probability that I get to legitimately say, wow, good job? That's my responsibility, to set you up to do it right so I can give you the credit for it. So that's why I think about every time I create a schedule. Lastly, think about how long you could do something on a schedule before it stops working. How long could your kids be engaged in this whatever it is activity before it would break down? So you should write this down. It's really complicated. Don't go that long. If you said after 30 minutes this will break apart, then it should go 29 minutes. Now there are times when you say, yes, but we have to do an hour. Then break it up. Do 29 minutes, take a break, do 29 minutes. But it makes no sense to say, I believe this will go really sour at 29 minutes. I'm going to make it go 40. There's just no logic to that at all. And I do have people say, no, it's state law to do an hour. Right, but first of all, I doubt that. But even if it is, the state law doesn't say 60 consecutive minutes. We have to make the schedule work for us. You don't want to be a slave to your schedule. You have the ability to create the schedule that makes your life easiest. Make that schedule. Next, physical arrangements. And the first thing I think about when I think of physical arrangements is, can I see every kid in the room? No matter where I go in this classroom, and I mean anywhere I go in this classroom, I should be able to be in a position where with nothing more than a turn of my head, I can see every kid in the room. If that's not the case, I will predict problems in certain places. And you probably know this, kids with challenging behaviors have a built-in radar to find the opposite side of the thing you can't see through. So put those tall things against the wall because you don't want to have a sight block. Second, for years and years we've talked about active supervision as moving around the room, and I still think that's great. I'm going to call that proximity. However, I don't think you can move around the room all the time. You've got other things to do. I always called this moving around until several years ago we wrote a curriculum for bus drivers, and I realized bus drivers are never going to be up walking around. So what is active supervision if you're a bus driver? It's eye contact. And then it hit me, same for teachers. So here's the way I like to think about eye contact. When I look across a room, I see everybody. But every time I look across the room, I'm going to catch eye contact with individual people. And I think about this as my eyeballs can see your eyeballs, and your eyeballs can see that my eyeballs are seeing your eyeballs. This is not sneaky. I'm not spying. I am standing here and I'm looking right at you. Now, there are two ways this can go. It can go in a bad way if the look on your face is, I'm sick of kids. So I'm looking across here and just, who's going to piss me off today? When I walk into a classroom, I have to tell myself, the look on my face as I'm catching eyes going across the room is, I wonder who I could help. Who out there needs something that I could help them with? That's my job, is to help people. And every time I cross the room, I catch eyes. Now, I will admit there are some kids' eyes that I catch more than others. But I'm smiling while I do it. Back and forth. Next, how can I keep doing that when I have to go somewhere? Well, here's one thing to think about. As you move, continue to move your body. Even if I'm walking all the way down the side here, while I'm walking, I don't walk a straight line. I continue to stop and look the other way. That's a lot easier at the side than it is in the middle. In the middle, what's your name? Eric. Eric? Yes. Eric would like to punch somebody, probably her, right now. And if Eric knows that I walk a straight line slowly, when I say this, I'm coming to the back of the room. Right now, Eric has opportunity because he knows he's going to be looking the other way for a good 15 seconds. I could punch two people in that time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to never walk a straight line. And I know that's weird, and it comes from a place of paranoia that I have that you maybe don't or don't need. But when I walk through a room, I am stopping and starting and turning and talking and turning and stopping. And I call this the 1 second rule. What it means is every kid here has to believe that in less than 1 second, I could be looking right at them. You never know when it's coming, and it could happen in less than a second. Now, I haven't been looking over there in that corner for several seconds, but in less than a second, I could be. And as long as I keep mixing that up, what ends up happening is kids start thinking, you can't get away with that right now. And that's what I want. Because when kids think I can't get away with that and don't do it, I get to give them the credit. Hey, Eric, you know how we've been talking about hands to self, and you've really been showing a good job on that. Thanks, man. I appreciate your efforts on that. Remind me to tell your mom. Now, all of you who know Eric are saying this right now. Good job, Eric. All he did was sit there. Yeah, but he didn't punch anybody. You say, yeah, but he would if you weren't looking at him. First of all, you're welcome. Second, that's what teachers do. We create environments that set kids up to be successful. Now, here's the problem I have when I do this sometimes as a teacher go, I did that for 2 days and I stopped and he still had punch people. I say, why'd you stop? I thought this was like an intervention to fix him. No, this was an intervention to make your classroom work. Don't stop that. So I have to do this forever? Maybe. Would that be a problem? Well, it's an extra thing to have to think about. Yes, but here's what you've done. You've made that kid successful. And there is something that we know about called behavior momentum. Behavior momentum means the more times you've done the right thing and had someone tell you, wow, that's the right thing, the more likely you are to do it on your own later. How many times does he need to do it right and hear about it before he'll do it without me? It's not 2 days. And I don't know, Eric. It could be 5 years. But why stop if it's working? At some point, I want him to internalize that. And this is like what we call building a string. People don't like to break strings. You know, people say, I've been to that game every year for 10 years. I can't miss it this year because that would break the string. We don't like breaking strings. I'm building a string for him that he doesn't want to break. I want him at some point to think, boy, I've done this right for so many days in a row, and he really tells me I'm great and I'm feeling good about myself. I don't want to break that string. Like getting ready to go on a diet. starting right now. And someone says, pizza in the faculty room. You go, well, I'm not going to be that much fatter tomorrow. I'll just start my diet tomorrow. But if I've been on my diet for 10 days and I've lost weight and I'm feeling good about myself and people are applauding me, pizza in the faculty room is like, I'm not giving up a string of 10 good days for one of those cold, slimy pieces of pizza. But you got to have something to lose. You've got to give him the success. That's why we keep doing it. It is us making it happen, but if we don't make it happen, it's not going to happen. And kids don't self-correct very often. So other furniture things, think about teachers' desks. I don't know of any research on where a teacher's desk should be, but I think common sense would be wherever your desk would be, if you're seated at your desk, you should be able to see all the kids' eyeballs. Wherever that is, with nothing more than a turn of your head. I have had people say, no, I always put my desk at the back so they don't know if I'm looking. Oh, I think that's totally wrong. I want them to know I'm looking. I want my kids to always go, is he looking? Yep. Because they'll stop asking. But if they're always going, where's he now? What's he doing now? It drags them off task. Put yourself constantly in a position where it's the 1 second rule. They know, they're going to stop worrying about it. Kids' desks, I'll talk about some differences between independence and collaboration in a second. I will tell you, I advocate for assigning seats. That's me. I'll tell you why. If I can control the probabilities of success and failure with nothing more than who sits where, that's a pretty small price to pay. And remember why I would sit someone in a different place? So I could say good job to them tomorrow. That's why. And that's what I'm thinking of. So after I go into a classroom for a couple of days, and when we did stuff with the buses, I assigned seats on the buses for the same reason. They don't like it. That's the problem. So here's the trick you have to play on kids to get them to accept assigned seats, if you decide to do that. First, think out, what's my best organization in here? Think about where the kids you want to be seeing more could be, and think about which combinations are bad ideas. Then, create assigned seats. Excuse me. When they come in the morning, you say, hey, look up here. All the desks are up here with names on them. Find the one with your name, that's where you're sitting. That's true. This is also true. I like the idea that you guys would sit next to and get to know different people. And I'm going to keep changing it up a lot so you get to keep sitting next to different people. That's also true. This next one is not true. It is, in fact, a lie. This is totally random. It's not. It's not random. But they need to think that. Now, they're not going to trust you on that. They're not going to believe you. And what I'm going to find on that first day is, this was a bad idea. If these two sit together, it's just they don't get anything done. I try really hard not to change seats during class, because it's an argument. You sit over here, well, I'm not moving, she's the one that needs to move, and this will take more time than it's worth. What I will do to solve that problem today is proximity. I'll spend an inordinate amount of my time teaching walking right around in this area. Tomorrow when they come in, I say something like this. Last night I thought, what the heck, let's mix it up again. I love you getting to sit next to different people. I just drew a name out of a hat and threw it on the map. I don't even remember who it was. Take a look. And the kids will go, yeah, that's weird. The only thing different is he's sitting over there. And you go, huh, totally random. Now what will happen is, especially with older kids, they kind of catch on. You know what, yesterday these guys were talking and one of them moved. Nice try. Here's how you play the long con on the older kids. Wait a few days, find that kid that has never ever done anything wrong, probably smarter than the teachers and principals and people, and everybody knows that kid is an angel. Move that kid. come on in, you say, that's not a thought, what the heck, let's mix it up, drew a name out of a hat, let's see who it was. And people, it's funny, when I do this, I just try to look at the look on the kids' faces, and when they realize who it was that moved, they all go, she moved? And it's almost like you can see the wheels in their head go, this must be random. Because nobody would purposefully move her. She's on a pedestal. She's untouchable. You don't mess with her. This must be random. One of these days, I'm going to need to move Eric. And Eric's volatile. He's going to get upset. But I can say, Eric, man, this is completely random. Lots of people move. Remember when the Brainiac got moved? Yes, it could be. In fact, you could move again tomorrow. It's just a random thing. And I have found, even with the most challenging kids I've worked with, really, if they don't think you're doing it to them, they'll complain and they'll do it, and they don't care. But if I were to say to Eric, your behavior means you need to sit there, that's a big deal, a big argument. Now, none of these things are foolproof, because nothing is. All I'm doing with everything I think about is messing with the probabilities. How can I get in there and mess with it? Because if you're a teacher, you really are gambling. You gamble all day. Here's some kids that I want to do these things successfully that aren't. What could I do to make it work? That's a gamble, because there's no such thing as a sure thing. But all of these things that I'm talking about are the things you can play with to make that probability go more in your favor. You just have to figure out which of them you should use and how you should apply them given your circumstance. This is a classroom of rows. Rows are great for independent work, not as great for collaboration. Every classroom I ever taught as a teacher, in my career as a teacher, I always had kids with either in lockdown or in the EBD room, as we used to call it. And so I didn't have a whole lot of desks, but they were always in rows because independence was really important. The thing I like about them is the independence. The thing I don't like is in a big room, it's hard to move around. If I said I'd like to move through this room and touch every desk, this is how many steps it would take to touch every desk. And that's so many steps that it means I'm not going to do it very often. So I'm not going to have proximity to kids in the back nearly as often as I might. And that's fine if that works. Again, you get one thing, you lose another. You get independence, you lose some of your ability to move around. Now, back to the 4 kids here. I'm going to move them when I assign seats. Where should I put them? One, a mistake people make is they need to be as far away from each other and everyone else as possible. So 1 in each corner. And if there's 5, 1 goes out in the hall. And I really see people creating classrooms just to isolate kids. My response is, these kids are showing you that they need more teacher attention, not less. But the other way is just as bad, maybe worse. It's the front row is where kids with behavior problems go. This is an honestly true story. I was in a classroom years ago where the teacher had that, and she called the front row Skid Row. And she would threaten other kids. Another word out of you, you're going to be on Skid Row. I always felt like the unsaid part of that sentence was, with these losers. It's stigmatizing. So we don't want that. What we want is for those kids to be in places around the room that I can get to quickly and easily. I don't want to serpentine through the room to go to any of these kids. Even with rows, I can put a kid at the back and I can be reading a book to everybody and talking about something and just happen to end up standing right here. That's hard to do if I have to serpentine. Every one of those kids gets a lot more attention from me because of where they're sitting, but nobody would come in the room and guess where they were. They look like they're blended in because they are blended in. This is my least favorite room to teach in because you cannot get into the middle of it. If you think you can, they will push their backpacks and chairs up in there and you cannot walk in at all. This is what I do. I create a middle space. Now, if I can't go all the way around, I can do a W. But what that allows is for me to get into the middle. That's what I want. In every classroom, I want to be able to walk through the room. And the simpler I make it, the more often I will do it. So that simplicity. And notice where I've positioned kids. I can have a kid sitting at the far back and still randomly walk right up to him on a frequent basis. No one would guess that's where they're seated. This is the most common that I see. I love the symmetry of how clean this is. It's a nice rectangle made of rectangles, and it just feels clean and comfortable. Here's the problem. I can't walk around this clean and comfortable set of desks. So while I hate doing this, I'm going to mess it up. And the reason I messed it up is because it gives me a simple path to casually walk around all of them. In the morning when I walk in the room, I think, God, what a mess. But while I'm teaching, I think, this is so nice that I can just walk around and talk to everybody. That's why it's there. I put the kids that need me most on the inner part of the circle. I could also walk the outer if I wanted to. This is my favorite. The reason it's my favorite is because when I'm teaching, I rarely am walking around the room and thinking about where I'm going. It's more like this. It's random. But in this setup, no matter where I am, I could be to any other table in 3 or 4 steps. Something's going on over there, I can just keep talking, and very quickly I could be clear on the other side of the room. So I don't need to be running around to try to get to everybody. I can do that in more of a random fashion. So for the last part I want to talk about, and I don't always put this part in when I talk about classroom management, but the feedback I've gotten is that, I know this is not true for any of you, but people are saying, we have kids that have problems, even though we've done these things. How do you respond to problems? So, even though I know that doesn't happen for you guys, I want you to think about some things. Kids have problem behaviors. And if you're not familiar, they can be super annoying. They can get under your skin. They can make you crazy. If that's never happening to you, check your pulse, because something's wrong. It's not about do they get on our nerves, do they challenge my wits? They do. It's about how do I respond to it. And here's the way we have to think. Kid misbehaves. The prediction for what they do next is entirely upon us, probability-wise. Here's a kid, did something wrong. What we have to be thinking right now is, what would I like that kid to do next? They did something wrong, what would you like? This comes back kind of to that little bet we did of trying to move the kid. What do you want that kid to do? We're going to call that the prize. So kid misbehaves, think about the prize. Kid yells out, what would I like the kid to do? Stop, be quiet, raise their hand. Okay? What behaviors of mine create the highest probability for that outcome? If the outcome you want is, I'd like that kid to leave, that's easy. Start yelling at them, and they'll yell back. So we have to stop first and say, not what's the prize for us? What's the prize for the kid? What would be the best outcome for this kid if they were learning something and doing something right? How could I maximize the probability of that? Because if I get into an argument with them and they end up leaving the room, we've really not gone anywhere. We don't have any evidence that moving a kid out of the room changes their behavior. That's not to say it shouldn't ever happen, because clearly there are some times when it's necessary, but it isn't an intervention. So I want you to think about, what's my response when I first see a problem? I've had to teach myself to tap my foot 3 times is what I do when I'm working with kids, because I have a tendency to be I'll call it a knee-jerk smartass. And that's not a good thing. So when I first got out of college and I was working in residential treatment as a treatment counselor, the kids weren't that much younger than me, like 4 years younger than me. And they would have the dumbest burns. They thought they were so, oh, Mr. Scott, burn. And being 22, I had something slightly wittier to say back to them. But here's the problem. They don't have a witty comeback to that. So their comeback is, I will kill you and your family. It's a setup by me. They say something stupid, I give them this verbal battle that they can't win, and they'll come back with something dumb. And I realize I'm setting these guys up by trying to prove I'm this much wittier than a juvenile delinquent. So what I had to get myself thinking is, when they say that stupid thing and I've got the great comeback, tap my foot 3 times, and while I'm tapping it 3 times, think, what would be the perfect outcome for this kid right now? How could I do something to make that outcome? How could I get them to turn around, go do what they're supposed to do, and I can talk to them later? That's what I want. What could I do to maximize that probability? We could create a list of 1,000,000 things that are high or semi-high probabilities. This is the list of things that are always low probability. The threats, the ultimatums, the screaming, the shaming, the sarcasm, the anger, those things will escalate behavior. So we want to stay away from those kinds of things. And for me, I have to tap my foot 3 times to remind myself I want to go to a different list, because this is the list that comes up first in my brain if I'm not thinking about it. So let's look at reactive proximity for a simple problem in the classroom. I'm walking around the room, you are all working, this group right here is working really well, and I'm giving them a thumbs up. And by the time I walk over here to the other side of the room, that group is off task. They're giggling and goofing around and messing with stuff, and you can tell they're not getting anything done. The rest of the class is working, and they're focused until they hear this. Front table! There is nothing that you could be focused on that would be as potentially interesting as what they might be doing. You have to look. When I yelled, I drug every kid off task. Your first response to misbehavior should be eye contact. I step back so I got eye contact, and then I give them what I call 4 seconds of the mom look. If they get back on task because of the evil eye, 2 things. 1, praise. And I didn't yell it out, I lipped it. Second, and every kid in the world, I don't care what language they speak, knows what this means. This is the second thing I do. And you know what they're thinking right now? Oh, he's coming. He's coming over here. We were pretending to be on task because he's over there looking at us. He's actually coming over here. We have to actually do something. I've got him. And so because I know they have to actually do something, I'm going to go slowly on my way over there and talk to others and keep looking over there, talking to others. And that whole time, they're thinking, we have to actually do something because he's going to get here and say, look, show me what you've done. When I get here, always 3 things when you get here. 1, good choice. 2, Tell them what they should be doing next, but do it in a sneaky way. Oh, I see you guys all got started on number 1. At the end of number 1, everybody needs to choose one character. I'll be right back to see what you chose. I just told them, choose a character, but I didn't say it in those words. But I leave because Eric's in this group. And the longer I stand here and stare, the more likely Eric is going to see this as a challenge. These other kids are watching me, and he's standing here and I'm working like he's making me work. And I've got to say something. I got to get out of this predicament, and it'll produce a misbehavior. So hit and run. Great job. I can't wait to see what you do there. I'll be right back to see it. Leave. Talk to others. Come back. Oh, how'd you get on that number 1? Great working. Show me what you got. Okay. Oh, I see you need a little tighten that up. I'll be right back to see how you do it. So it's always, thank you for doing what I asked. Here's my feedback on what you've been doing. Here's what I need to see next. Boy, I can't wait to see it when I come back. Hit and run. Now, if they don't respond to the look, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it up close. If they don't respond to any of this, the last thing we do is confront them. I have to say something about what they're not doing. Here's what we know. Doesn't matter who you're confronting or why or what, start with a question. The question needs to be genuine. Like, I have a really genuine question. I'm curious, I'm interested in this because I think it would be good for you. Hey guys, I want to make sure that you guys get done with this because there's a lot of good stuff happening. So I want to make sure you got number 1 done. So does everybody make sure that you know what the number 1 part is? Because I want to make sure you know so you can get this done. Which is the same as saying, I don't think you guys know what you're doing. But it was a question that was, I'm wanting to help. But the question has to be genuine. If the question's not genuine, it'll cause other problems. Here's a not good question. Hey, I have a question for you guys. What's everyone in the room doing except for you? That's not a question. That's a, I'm sick of you. That's what that one is. Make it genuine as we go. Now, just in case you don't know what noncompliance is, I'd like to talk about it. Noncompliance is kids not doing what we've asked them to do. I'm going to talk about one fairly specific type, but the rest of them all kind of fit in. Excuse my cough. I've had a cold like weeks ago, and the cough lingers, but not contagious as far as you know. So, so I ever think about this kind of kid. I say to the group, all right, everybody get out a book and pencil. We're going to do this thing together. And here's a kid in the back goes, wait, what? I can't. Why? I don't have a book. Oh, well, I can get you a book. Yeah, but I also need a pencil. So I can get you a pencil. Yeah, but I also got to get my coat. And so I might as well go to my locker and do all this at once. It's okay. Well, you don't need a coat right now. Yeah, but I got to go to the bathroom. So I can go get my coat, go to the bathroom. It's like, yeah, but this isn't time for that either right now. Yeah, but I need to see the nurse. So, and this goes on for the whole class. I keep saying, here's what you need to do. Kid keeps saying, I can't. I keep saying, I've got a solution. And the kid keeps saying, nah, that won't work for me. What has turned around here is that the kid is driving and I'm chasing the car. He's going, can't do it. And I'm yelling behind the car, I can help you. Nope. I can help you. Nope. And he drives for the whole period. Here's the part that makes me insane. At the end of the class, I say, you know, you don't have anything done, so you don't have a grade for today. And this is the part that drives me nuts. I wanted to, you wouldn't let me. Okay, so I take a deep breath on that one and think out. How could I have not let that happen? Take a look here at this video, which is that kind of a situation going on.
Okay, so now everybody should be able to do this. So what I want you to do now, go ahead and do the next 2 problems in the book all by yourself. Go ahead.
I can't. I don't have a book.
We'll find one.
That's mine. Finders keepers.
Seriously,
need to go to my locker.
No, there's not time for that right now.
Do it without a book.
Or I could take yours.
David, get to work.
Are you deaf? I said I don't have a book.
Then you have a 0 for the day.
Fine. Whatever.
Okay, so that's kind of the circumstance we described. The first problem from the teacher is when the kid says, I don't have a book, the teacher says, go find one. Put it all back on the kid. Well, one could argue that's what he was doing for the rest of this video, was trying to find a book. When we've asked a kid to do something, and for whatever reason they can't do it, stop. Give them one thing you know they can do. It could be have a seat. Why would I have a seat? I don't have a book, I don't have a paper, I can't get anything. And as soon as you have a seat, we'll solve that first problem. Well, I don't see why I would sit down if I don't have a book. Well, we'll talk about that when I see you sitting down. If they're already sitting down, I might say, get out a piece of paper. Why would I get paper out if I don't have a pencil? We can talk pencil when I see the paper out. I'm driving. You get me and you get my attention and you get me to answer your questions when you follow directions. You go first. You follow directions, I'll answer the question. Thanks for getting out that paper. Here's a book and a pencil. Tell you what, get it numbered from 1 to 10. Why would I get it numbered from 1 to 10? Well, let's say I just gave him just the pencil. Why would I get it numbered 1 to 10? I don't have a book. When it's numbered 1 to 10, we'll talk about book. When he gets it to 10, thank you for getting that 1 to 10. Here's the book. Okay, now I need to go do this. Well, we'll start working on the first 3 problems. You get those first 3 problems done, we'll talk about that. Now, we're not going to do everything he asks. Say, I want to go to the nurse. Yeah, well, this isn't nurse time, but I'll tell you what. If you get the entire thing done, I could call the nurse and ask about when there's an appointment. But the only way you're going to get me to deal with you is to follow directions. I'm driving, not you. There's always something they can do to follow a direction. Make that happen first. Then we go to the next step. And I'll do one more. Let's do disrespect. When we did focus groups with teachers a while back, they gave us a bunch of behaviors that we tried to create scenarios for to talk about how to deal with it. The number one, most often thing they said was noncompliance. The number one thing they said bugged them the most was disrespectful kids. So I'll just let you watch this first.
Quit.
Some of you students are unbelievably rude. I don't know why I waste my time with you. What did you say?
Nothing.
So what'd you say?
I didn't say anything.
So who's escalating here is the teacher. So here's the question. Why would a kid be disrespectful to you in front of others? It is total power over a teacher. What do we mean by power? It means I can make the teacher have emotions. We have to be thinking, I'm an adult, you're not. You do not have power over my emotions. But if you give them power over your emotions, they'll take more. They'll never be satisfied. You can't let them see you sweat. They're going to bug you. They're going to get under your skin. And you have to tap that foot 3 times, take a step back and say, what do I do to deal with this thing? Now, if a kid is super disrespectful to me, I want not only that kid, but the rest of the class to see my response. So if I get this disrespectful comment over here, I just say, let's keep going with that. Oh, we need to talk after class. And then I just keep going. If the kid starts saying something back to me, I don't think that was disrespectful. I just say, well, we can talk about that after class. If they keep saying stuff to me, well, I don't think we need to meet after class. I don't respond to that. I've already won this power struggle. We're meeting after class. There's no need for any further discussion on it. And every kid needs to see that. He doesn't play that game. You're a child, I'm an adult. You say something rude, there'll be a consequence, but I'm not going to stop teaching. And I'm not going to put on a show. That teacher's putting on a show. And every kid's watching it. And what they're all thinking is, if you get this guy going, we don't have to do any work. He'll run around screaming. What could we do tomorrow? Oh, but if we put a tack on his chair, we wouldn't have to work for a month. But that's what their thinking is. It works with this guy. You can't let kids get under your skin. You can go home at night and scream into your pillow, or drink, or whatever you need to do. But at school with kids, it has to be, I'm an adult, you're a child. You do not control my emotions. I'm sorry you made that choice. I'm sorry this is the consequence you chose. But that was you, not me. And again, for me, that takes tapping my foot 3 times to remind myself to go in that direction, because it isn't the first thing that wants to come out of my mouth. But it is something we have to think about and practice, I think, in order to make it work. So, every slide I showed you is in the handout in a different order of some sort. If you have questions, this is my email address. A lot of videos, I showed you only 2 videos I think today. There's hundreds of videos at my website, cibrs.com, which is at the University of Louisville. If anybody has any other questions, I'll be here afterward. And this is what I'm supposed to show you now. Thank you all for being here. Enjoy the rest of your conference.